My name is Maureen Castellan. I help you launch your podcast by lunch and also monetize within 90 days. If you've been following along, the recording studio, the recording space is still being set up, so that is why the ladder is behind me. Great stuff, let me tell you, super convenient. But I had to launch this podcast, relaunch it. If you've been around for a while, I was helping um people sell courses. I was in the classroom for 12 years, marketing for 15, and for the past 5 years, I've been helping solopreneurs and corporations design learning material. So I'm an instructional designer. So it was teacher, copywriter, strategist, and now a instructional designer. So it has been an interesting life. But I wanted to talk today about the different types of podcasts. Last time we talked about how to know, 4 questions to help you start thinking about what you want to podcast about. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that. I have my notes here. Yes, I have bad handwriting. And we're going to go through the different types. There are 8 types, and I'm going to tell you some of my favorites. But first one is the solopreneur podcast. So most of my podcasting, especially for my spooky podcast, has just been me by myself. Like I said, when I was recovering from fibroid surgery, I was laying in my bed, and just yapping into my phone with my little fuzzy microphone. And, I didn't do video at the time. And, you know, we I was mostly a solo podcaster. I'm going to have some guests on. I'm going to have some of my marketing guests on, my lawyer to talk about some copywriting, and then someone who I helped launch their podcast. It's called Bravo at Bedtime, and next week we launched it. God, not even a month ago. I, helped her put it together. Not even a month ago, and next week she is going to be the the podcaster, the bartender for Watch What Happens Live. So hopefully by the time you're listening to this, it will have gone very well. Sadie deserves everything great. So I am a solo podcaster for the most part. We'll have a few guests coming up. So that's my style. You really have to practice your speaking points when you're solo podcaster. I do it while I'm WALK dog at the PRK, because you have no one that's going to cover for you. Sometimes I stammer, or whatever it may be. You you don't have anyone or anything to fall back on, or any shticks or any inside jokes to break any tension or whatever. So you really have to be prepared when you're a solo podcaster. Interview style. I've been interviewed on a couple of podcasts. The one trick with this is you have to send the questions beforehand. Otherwise, I was supposed to be a reoccurring guest on a podcast, and it was like pulling teeth to get the pre-questions. And some of these questions were very detailed, and I would have liked to have thought out my answer more, especially since I'm an overthinker. So that was that was not great. So first type is solo, second is interview, third is if you have a co-host. So the way that I recommend that clients work with a co-host is, I, at my grand age, have luckily never been chosen to be a godparent. I very much didn't want that responsibility, and a lot of the people that I know that didn't choose family members to be their godparents of their child, they have since stopped speaking with the person. So when you pick your co-host, really think about how you work together. Maybe you're friends since childhood, or someone you feel is like a sister, but things can change very drastically between someone who's just doing this for fun and it's a hobby. Maybe you want to break down Bravo episodes or whatever. And then when money gets involved, when you can monetize, things can take a different turn, because like I always say this, there's the upper class, the working class, And then the pretend class, there are people who are maxing out their credit cards so people will think that they are, of means. And a lot of people are like that. I luckily am not. I watched my father squander his money and also my brother. And so I'm very careful. Some would even say tight fist. I used to be cheap, well, frugal, but So when money enters the conversation, friendships change. So if this is a friend you've already done business with, great. But I'm just going to let you know the nature of your podcast is going to change once you monetize. And I help you monetize within 90 days. So it'll go from we're best friends from childhood to, okay, well, how much should we charge for our monthly subscription? Which platform should we use? Like it really, really brings a different vibe to your friendship. So that's a choice for you to make, not for me. Let's see. Docu-series. So I went to Holy Cross Academy in Miami, Florida from like 92 to 94 before I went to boarding school. And there was a murder at Holy Cross. My nun got murdered. And there is a docu-series on Apple, and it's called Murder at Holy Cross. And it has 3 seasons, I believe, 2 or 3 seasons, and it breaks down the nitty-gritty of the murder and how the monks were buying boys from Ukraine. My God, being Catholic is a wild ride. So that's something that you can do. I happen not to be into true crime at all. I like spooky. I do not like violent. True crime is something I just, as an overprivileged white woman, I just never got into it, surprisingly. But it's not for me. But if that's something for you, and especially if you have a tie to the true crime, like these girls also went to my high school, and they wanted to talk about it. They became friends with the actual murderer, which was very controversial at the time during the pandemic. I think it was 2021 or 20. But if you were going to cover a crime, try to see if you have an actual tie to it. The next type of podcast is a panel. So I recommend no more than 3 people on this panel, because I have been in a podcast where it's 7 of us and we're all fighting for time. And there's always some, overconfident yapper who, will be like, oh, let me check that. And then you don't know whether to talk over them or what when they're checking. So 3 is enough. 3 is a panel. Don't go beyond that. If you are at a professional development or you're at a work event and there's more people at the panel, I mean, we can talk about that one-on-one, because that's a little risky. 6 is a teacher, like how I used to be, helping people learn how to do something. And I had a client yesterday, and she said, well, I know you teach a lot in your podcast, especially my spooky one. She's like, but for me, I don't want to teach. So if you have something to teach, and remember, you can only be like 1 step ahead in the process, and people will pay for that 1 step ahead. Like gladly will pay for that 1 step ahead. So you can do that as a teacher, but her podcast centers around stories. So when we had our call, I said, your podcast is very international. I suggest you go very, very hyper local, and, ask, it's UGC, user generated content, like ask for people locally for stories. People, if they feel like they have a connection to you, or like, you go to the same Piggly Wiggly, they will want to work with you and tell you stories that they may not feel comfortable telling anyone else, or feel like no one else will understand. And then I am on TikTok. So I'm on TikTok and YouTube on Pass the Mic, or Pass Me the Mic. I'll put the links in the description. But if you are writing a book, it used to be that you could serialize your stories in a blog, and now the podcast has replaced the blog. I don't know if you remember when it was like 10 years ago, everyone had a blog. But if you're writing a book, you can talk about it on your podcast. You can talk about the creative process. You can just read out loud the story so people can invest it, or you could do a combination of both. So behind the scenes, what your process was, the actual product or a mix of them, that could also work. So those are the 8 types of podcasts. And then again, you can mix. I do solo and teaching. And whatever you feel is going to work for you, whatever you feel like you can show up and do every day or once a week or whatever. The real key thing with being successful with podcasting is consistency. Like with social medias, consistency, consistency, consistency. Just like how they say in real estate, it's location, location, location. Really think about, and nothing's set in stone. But it's really a good idea to kind of take a weekend to think about what type of podcast you want to do. You answer the 4 questions. What do you get paid to do? What do people text and ask you about? What gap do you see in the market and what your special interest is? And then based on that, you can start putting your podcast together. I'm going to leave my link tree in the episode description so you can start, working with me, see where we go. I'm going to have a course very shortly, and also I'm going to set up a community. So it's going to be great. I hope you have a great week, and thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.